All right. Thank you for joining us. My name is Katie. I am the host today for Screen Guardians, and I'm very excited to welcome and introduce a friend, a dear friend, somebody I've known a long time, somebody I have admired and trusted and looked to for many years for guidance. And I'm really excited to have her on. Her name is Jenny Taylor. Jenny and I have worked together. We have known each other. We have grown in faith together, and she's been a mentor to me. And I wanted to invite Jenny on today because she is somebody who we have bonded over this, digital health, this topic, and raising children in this digital age and the challenges that come with that. And so I'm excited to jump into this topic today. But first, I would love for Jenny to introduce herself and share a little bit more about her life, what she does, and then we'll kind of jump into our topic. So thank you, Jenny, for being here.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you. Like Katie said, my name is Jenny. I have spent, 20 plus years in the corporate world doing marketing, PR, media relations, crisis communication, employee communication, all the communications. And I loved that until I didn't love it. I ended up getting pregnant later in life. And that was such a huge blessing to us. And that really started to change just about everything for us. I wanted to be a very active, present mom. And the type of career that I had was very time consuming. It was very stressful. It was very rewarding, but there was a lot that came with it. And I just knew personally for me that it would be very difficult for me to show up in a way that I wanted to show up as a parent. And especially if anybody has dealt with infertility or anything like that, you know that when you do get the news that you're pregnant, it's like your world is just like, okay, I want to just be the best mom I can be. And that just set me on this path of figuring out how do I be that mom? How do I contribute to the household? How do I get out of corporate? Because I knew that in my role in corporate, I wasn't going to be able to stay in that role and parent the way I wanted to. And so then I started down this journey of the whole entrepreneurial world and space and building businesses, selling businesses. I've learned through the process that I love to build. And so I often jump into a new industry, build, and then sell things off. And I help other people do that too. And so I work from home, so I have a career, but I feel like my most important job or most important thing that I do is really being mom, being parent, being very active in my daughter's life. And so that is what I do. I don't do anything that's going to compromise my ability to be present for my daughter. And um, I had one mom give me this advice, and I feel like it was just so powerful to me because when I was pregnant, I was getting all kinds of advice of, you're gonna want to be home with your baby, you're gonna want to be, present and home. And of course, I didn't doubt that at all. But I had one mom say, as long as your baby is loved and getting food and being taken care of, they're not going to remember how present you were. But when they get to 5, 6, 7, 8, they need their mom. They need you present. They need you actively present, like not just in the room, but actively present. And so when I heard that, I was like, wow, this is so fascinating to me because it was so different from what I was hearing. I was like, okay, I have this window to build something that will allow me to be home. And now when I look back, she's 14, that could not have been better advice, because at that time too, I didn't know the implications of social media. We weren't even thinking about phones. We weren't thinking about any of that. I mean, I had a phone, but wasn't thinking about my daughter having a phone. And now with all of that on top of just being a teenager, I am so grateful that I have time and that I'm home with her because it's a lot.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
exposed to a lot. So that's kind of me in a nutshell,
Yeah.
navigating middle school and all the things as a
Yeah,
mom.
and so that's one of the things that Jenny and I have in common, is putting mom first, right? Being able to we are business-minded women. we love working, right? And but
Yes.
being a mom first is our primary role, and that's really important to us to show up in a very big way. And I think today that's probably more important than ever because kids have so many things they're inundated with the digital world, right? And so many things that so many variables that they're facing on a daily basis that we did not.
Yeah,
And so
100%.
and Jenny and her family had endured some challenges with their daughter as she was entering adolescence and then also phones, right? Was entering the picture with some
Yep.
bullying, correct?
Yes.
So
Yes.
I really wanted Jenny to come on and talk about the adverse experiences they had navigating the digital landscape, technology, smartphones, all that, with their daughter and how they got on the other side. So would you say, and so I said bullying, Jenny, but would love for you to share in your own words the complications and challenges you guys faced. There was like a rough time where you got a period of time that was really challenging for you guys, and from conversations that we've had. And so I'd love for you to expand upon that and share what that was, how you guys navigated it, what advice you would give to our listeners. Because I guarantee most people probably are going to face moments of adversity with friends and how to navigate that with digital connections, kids being connected digitally, social media, group chats, like all the things, right?
Yeah. Yes, and I think one of the first things that I wanna share, because I think we were really surprised to find ourselves in this situation, because our daughter is, she's super outgoing, she's never had a problem having friends, she's never had a problem at school, we've always had great parent-teacher conferences, she is a leader in dance, there's all these positive things that, just normal kid, she's not like a perfect kid at all, but we were very surprised when we found ourselves in this situation because it wasn't, I think there are some families and some kids that you go, oh, they've had like this history of complicated situations. We didn't have that. We didn't have that even slightly. And so when we found ourselves here, we were kind of like, wow, okay, what is this? And then we were kind of wrestling ourselves, my husband and I as parents going, are we overreacting? Like, is this like really bullying? Like, you start to question all of these things. Like, we didn't even,
Yeah,
I
how is
guess
this
we
our
weren't
reality?
prepared. Yeah,
Yeah,
we weren't prepared at all. And then we
yeah,
were kind of there and then we were like, well, this is weird, and you have a lot of opinions as you start to navigate something like this. We had a set of families that, kind of approach things as hands off, just let kids deal with it. And then you had kind of the middle group where they were like, well, kids actually need some help. They need help navigating, they need help working through complicated situations. And then you have a whole nother set of parents that are like, they just don't get any access to it. Like they're completely anti phone, social media, whatever. So we found ourselves, we're kind of in the middle. We wouldn't consider ourselves hovering or helicopter at all, but we're definitely active and present. We're very open with our daughter. We are very open to having conversations with her. And this situation, we found out about it simply because I was with her when I saw her face change when she was on the phone. And I said, "What is going on?" And she was like, "I don't know." And then she started sharing with me, and it was an extreme case of isolation, bullying, ganging up on. Um, it was a group of kids that were at a basketball game, and then they started calling her. Like, it started through Messenger, and then it's progressed to calling, and
so
I
to
actually
clarify,
answered.
sorry, Jenny, just to clarify. So when it said you started on Messenger, just like a Instagram message or Facebook message, sorry, Facebook Messenger.
She would have at the time, I'm pretty sure it would have been Snapchat,
Okay,
which we're not a huge fan of that, because messages go away, but
right.
it is an app that most of the kids
Yeah.
use. It's
Right.
how they communicate. And
Right.
so our approach really has been to try to help her navigate versus restrict.
Right. To clarify, Jenny, can you share how old Charlotte was at the time? And
Yes.
like you
So,
mentioned, she was well liked. Like she had lots of friends. She was well liked,
yep.
seemingly not any like struggles or tension between friendships. Kind of a normal kid, likable, and just kind of came out of nowhere.
Yes. So this would have been 6th grade. And, she was probably 11 or 12. Um, she was one of the last kids to get a phone in her age group. So we really held off as long as we could, from that standpoint. And we we had a pact with another family at dance. We were like holding out, and they caved in. And so we were like, okay, we're caving into, because we these were the last two kids not to have a phone at their age. Um and then it just became like this, how do we navigate, and we were navigating it, and she had pretty decent rules in place, and we stayed very connected. She knew that we would see everything, and she was very open with what was going on. And it just escalated. We didn't realize things were going on behind the scenes before that, but it escalated at this basketball game when I saw her face. And then as we started to dig in, we were like, oh my gosh, this has a lot of depth to it. It's been going on for a while. Um, and it really started because of something really stupid. And this is where I think it's important for parents to understand. She was in 6th grade. Um, she had said to a girl that she thought an 8th grade boy was cute. Now, mind you, she's 6th grade. So there's a huge difference between a 6th grade girl and an 8th grade girl. Um, she had never dated or anything like that. So there was nothing like her in her brain thinking that this was going to be her boyfriend or anything like that. She literally just said he was cute. Well, the 8th grade girl that was his girlfriend learned about it, and that created Charlotte being a target. And so that started a whole process of things. Um, this girl and her best friend were known in the school as being the bullies. They were known as being kind of the mean girls. They were 8th graders. So then Charlotte's friend group in 6th grade quickly realized that Charlotte was a target and quickly moved away from her because they were afraid of becoming the target. So there's all these implications, like, and if parents that are listening don't understand kind of the process and the cycle of bullying, it's really important to educate yourself on it, because there are a lot of pieces to it, and there are a lot of things that good kids get caught up in because they're scared. They do not want to be the target. And that's exactly what happened to Charlotte. Even her friend group, who loved her and adored her, the fear of being the target was greater than how much they loved and adored her. And so then this created this she was the target, and she became a target of not only her friend group, but then anyone else in the school that didn't want to upset the two mean girls. And so it went from social media to physical things happening at school. When we found out about it, there wasn't anything physical at school yet. Like, it had just started to kind of become clear that Charlotte stepped politically into like a hornet's nest.
Yeah.
And when she started getting these messages, it was a group of people at a basketball game that were trying to they were trying to be cool with the mean girls, and it was boys and girls. And so at the expense of Charlotte, they were, making fun of her, calling her stupid, all of these types of things. And then as we dug in deeper, um, there was a private group chat called, the Charlotte hater group that had been going on, making fun of her, isolating her, doing all kinds of things like that. Then it started to turn physical at school where, they would intimidate her. They would go to her locker. They would bump into her. They would pull her book bag, like different things like that, with it just all intimidation tactics and things. Um, and the only reason why we were able to kind of pull all these pieces together were two things happened. One of the girls in her friend group, her phone had been taken away. She was in trouble. So all of the texts and all of the stuff that was going on, she wasn't able to delete them because she didn't have her phone. And thankfully, that was a family that the parents were willing to work with us versus try to cover up for their kid. So we had that on our side. And then we had one mom that was so smart. Um, Her son was involved, and she was very upset that her son was involved. And so she took her son's phone and she sent a text message out to the boys as if it was her son and basically baited them and said, "You said you were going to take the fall for me, blah, 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 blah." And she got all of the details acting as her son. And so, excuse me. So between that and then what we could piece together with the other parent who found the phone that hadn't been deleted, we are able to start to put together the group chat. Because what had happened when they found out that we knew, the kids sent a message to everybody saying, delete everything. The parents know, and we'll start a new one. So then, you have all of that going on where kids are savvy, snap delete stuff anyway. So there's all of these like, there's a lot of depth to what can happen when you're dealing with social media. Excuse me.
Sure, yeah.
So,
So it's happening on Snapchat and then in Messenger, like text message, like a group chat.
yes.
So how once you got the picture, the big picture kind of, and it's thankfully some of those parents, were able to support you guys and jump in. So what happened? How did you guys resolve this with the other kids, the other parents, the other families? How did Charlotte feel safe again?
So like I said, there's kind of buckets of parents, and we learned this because we didn't know this either. We had never dealt with a situation. And so, we had one family that didn't want to take any accountability, completely denied that their kid was involved in any of it, even though we had screenshots of all of it. Like between the mom and the one phone that they couldn't delete, and the kid wasn't even aware that the parent was looking into it. We had screenshots of who was saying what, who was involved. So we were fortunate that way. It doesn't always happen that way. But we had one family that was completely just dismissive, not going to be part of it, didn't believe it, all a lie, even with the screenshots. Then we had
Wow.
a middle group that 3 of the boys, 2 of the girls were horrified that their kids would do that. Came to our house, physically apologized, sat across the table from Charlotte and had to see her face, like had to see how hurt she was. So it was really cool that the parents were willing to do that. We prayed together as families, and we tried to do what we could to restore the relationship. And that was really cool. However, looking back, we needed to do more than that because these kids were scared of these older kids. So while we were doing some things that we thought were helpful to restore the relationship, the fear still was what were taking over the actions, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then we had a couple of the families that, apologized, and it kind of didn't want to be as involved as the ones that sat at our table, prayed with us, that kind of thing. We went to the principal and we went to the counselor at school. Um, neither were helpful. What we found is that the counselor was pretty exhausted, didn't have the tools that she needed to do the job, knew 100% who these kids were, um, told Charlotte that her best approach is that put her head down and someone else will be the target soon enough, which to us was horrible because it
Yeah.
wasn't dealing with what the true issue was. Um,
Why wasn't the bully facing any consequences?
I don't know. Like the counselor said that um, they had tried different things and nothing worked. Which it just was really a very weird approach, honestly, to us.
Yeah.
Like we were blown away by it, and we sat down with the principal. Um, it was nuanced because the parent that didn't want to be involved is also an employee of the school, and so she had went and talked to the principal before we were able to go talk to the principal. Um, but we had documentation of everything, so it wasn't like we were just in there making things up. But I think it was very complicated for the principal because it was an employee, that the kids went to the school, like, there was a lot of layers involved. And when we talked to the principal was willing to listen, but they weren't willing to take any steps to help. And so, it was kind of like, well, it didn't happen during school hours because it was at a basketball game. However, it was a school basketball game. So it was just really weird. But they had this loophole of, well, it didn't happen during school. Um, we offered, there was a book that was very helpful to us that's called No More Mean Girls. And the author does, like, she'll do conferences for schools to help because she's seeing this behavior. And I think too, with we were coming off of COVID, so you had like a lot of interesting dynamics going on because I think I don't even know if we fully understand all of the things that we're going to experience because of COVID and lockdown. And kids just their worlds were completely turned upside down, so we also had that playing into the timing of this. But we offered to pay and bring this lady in, teach the parents, talk to the kids. Principal didn't want anything to do with it. Um,
Wow, that's crazy to me.
it was so nuts. Some of the stuff continued. Um, Charlotte was scared to go to school. Like, there were so many things that just, it was wild. We didn't know, like, is this bullying? Is this not bullying? Like, we didn't know. Like, you're kind of sitting here going, is this something that's a big deal? Is it not a big deal? Um, the principal basically said the only step that we had was to go to the sheriff. And so we went to the sheriff simply because we weren't sure, like, we don't know, like, is this even a thing? Like, and the sheriff looked through everything, and the sheriff said, this is actually one of the most extreme cases that we've experienced, and told us what we could do if it continued. And, we weren't in it to try to demolish kids. Like, we literally were trying to figure out, how do we help these kids? Because clearly this is a challenge that kids are dealing with.
Yeah.
And when we didn't get any support or help from the principal or the counselor, we were kind of like, shoot, this feels like we almost have to do this on our own,
Yeah.
which is really wild.
Yeah.
So we wanted Charlotte to finish the school year. We thought it was important for her to learn that lesson of learning how to do hard things, and she did. We hired a family coach to help us through it and to help walk her through. Because I think at that age, she's like, "What did I do? Like, what did I do to deserve this?" So just to help her with her mindset and just understanding that, she didn't do anything wrong to warrant this behavior. We stayed very close to her. We were already monitoring social media, but we started monitoring it more because we were somewhat naive to the reality of what could happen through social media. Because, like I said, good kid, no problems like that. So we probably went into it somewhat naive, honestly. Um, and just, have continued to try to coach her through, using it as a learning experience. We did end up changing schools the next year, which was a very good choice for us. We struggled with that though too. We didn't know. Like we're like, are we overreacting? What's the right thing to do for your kid? It's really a tough place to be in. But it was a good choice. And she still has a coach that's just helping her with, trust and friendships and that kind of thing, because it definitely impacted her ability to trust people, because it was her friend group. I mean, it was people that she thought she was really close to. I will say this is really fascinating. Um, a plus that has happened is the two girls. So the two girls, she was in sixth grade. They were in eighth grade. So now Charlotte's in eighth. So now these girls are, um,
Sophomores?
yes, and they've connected on Snap, and they connected the first of the year. And I was very scared. I was like, I don't know if this is a good idea, Charlotte. And Charlotte was like, it's time to put this to bed. And I was like, okay, like, wanting to trust the process, but nervous, thinking, what are these girls going to do? Like, are they going to destroy her again? And they both apologized. They both feel horrible for how they treated her. One of them has really been over backwards to repair the relationship with her and explain to her that she was going through some really hard times and didn't know how to go through those hard times and didn't have the support that she needed to go through the hard times, and was taking it out. She was lashing out. She was taking it out on people around her, and Charlotte happened to be one of the people that, you know, was her target. And while that is really cool and really awesome, such a great lesson for Charlotte, Charlotte is still working through, there's implications for everything, right? So, she internalized a lot of that stuff. She thinks that she did something to warrant that. And so she's still working through a lot of those insecurities and, mindset things.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, and at that age, I mean, what others think of you and how your friends treat you at that age through most of adolescence and into early adulthood even. I mean, even, like I would get stressed out if I don't feel like somebody likes me. If somebody's mean to me, that would bother me. But that really impacts that age, that adolescent age. And so bullying, I, just kind of did a quick like glance of it. It's the physical or psychological distress as a result of chronic behavior that is repeated, intentional, and involve a power imbalance. And poor Charlotte. So when that happened to her, did she internalize it and kind of hold it in for a while? And then you just happened to see that, one of the messages come through and her face change. Like, how long had it been going on before you guys were able to kind of jump in and start helping and supporting her?
I don't have an exact timeline, but a couple of the girls were at our house, and we had just like when you have like one of those weird moments and you're like, that was weird. This isn't adding up. What is going on? Um, two of the girls were at our house. They were getting ready to go to a game. They were having a blast. We had gone like on a nice hike. Like it was awesome. Out of nowhere, the mom who didn't want to get involved came and picked the other two girls up. She wouldn't tell me why. She wouldn't tell me what's going on. I'm like, what is happening? Did someone do something? Like, what is going on? Like, and she would not say a word. And I was like, this is so bizarre. Because usually it's like, if that happens, it's like, nope, my daughter crossed the line. She knows she did it. I'm taking her home. The parent usually will like tell you, like, she lied to me, whatever. Nothing. So I was like, what is going on? And then they still met up and went to the game. So I'm like, this is so weird. And the mom kept saying, oh, this has nothing to do with Charlotte, nothing to do with Charlotte. I'm like, this is so bizarre. Everything inside of me was going, this doesn't add up. This doesn't add up. This doesn't add up. And so that was like the first indication, like something felt off, but I could not connect the dots at all. At that game, there was a situation where the girl who the mom didn't wanna get involved was punched in the face by a boy. And so in my brain, I'm thinking, "Okay, this girl must have some challenges because it was the mom that picked her up," like, so I'm like, "It must not have anything to do with Charlotte." I just believe the mom. Looking back, I realize, okay, the mom got clued in because they were looking at this girl's Snapchat, the 8th grader, and the girl freaked out because she didn't wanna be the target. So the mom came and picked them up. And then, so there's all this spiraling stuff going on. Um, some of the other things that were going on that we had no clue is once Charlotte became the target, the girls liked her, so they were still hanging out with her, but they were trying to save themselves. So they were doing things so that it appeared as if they didn't like her.
Right,
Do you know what I
right.
mean? So they
Yeah,
would
it's
spend the
it's like a
night.
survival, you know?
Totally, like,
Yeah,
they're totally trying to survive and trying not to be the person that is the target. So we would have sleepovers at our house, and they would record stuff from our house and send it to the group chat about how much they hated Charlotte or how much they hated, our family and all of this kinda stuff, and yet they were the ones that were asking to spend the night at our house,
yeah.
so it was really weird behavior, but it was all behavior based on fear and based on not wanting to be the target. So I don't know the exact timeline, but it definitely had started. Charlotte didn't know it had started. She'd felt like maybe like something's weird with my friend group, but she couldn't really figure it out because she was still hanging out with them. They were still spending the night, those types of things were still going on. But yet behind the scenes, these kids were trying to build a relationship with the mean girls. They were trying to stay out of being the target. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on. And then the boys, they just kind of got caught up in it because they were, you know, two of the boys were dating two of the girls that were Charlotte's friends. They were those like sixth grade boyfriend girlfriend that, you're not really doing anything, but they were trying to stick up for their girlfriends, and be cool and all of that. So it's so complicated. And so, um, but I think what's important for parents to understand is that this is how this stuff starts. Like and it could happen to any kid. Um, and if you're not actively involved and you're not actively connected with your kid, Charlotte just had a really good friend of hers try to commit suicide. And, you know, that's complicated in and of itself. But there's a big piece of what is troubling this young girl because of social media, because of, things that have happened to her through social media. Like, you have to be involved. I get how easy it is just to be like, "I don't want to deal with this." We have to deal with it because it is part of their lives. It changes the way they communicate. Um, there is crazy stuff that they can be exposed to if we're not careful and if we're not educating them on, what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. Because no matter what kind of restrictions you have, like Charlotte still gets stuff, and we've been very open with her and we have a lot of restrictions in place and we look at everything. She still gets stuff. She still gets nude images. She still gets requests to, join something that would be something completely outside of our family values. There's just a lot that these kids are exposed to, and it's not going away. So we have to play an active role, and it is stressful. It's one of the most stressful things that I do as a parent is trying to help figure out how do I help her navigate it? What are the restrictions I put in place? Because it's constantly changing too. And it
Mhm,
is such a key piece of their life. Like,
mhm,
we've talked about, my husband and I have talked about, like, does she just not have it? Is that the answer? I don't think that's the answer because then she's isolated and alienated from her friend groups. And so it's important to figure out how do they participate in a way that supports your family values, supports the future that you have in mind for your kids. Um, and they also understand the ramifications, you know?
Mhm.
I think
Yeah,
some of them don't even understand that this stuff lives on forever.
right,
So, you know, it could
right.
impact getting into college, it could impact coaches, it could impact jobs down the road. You know, there's so much to it that goes beyond that moment, whether they decide to send a nude or ask for the nude or whatever it is, you know, it's crazy.
Yeah, it
You
is
know, and
crazy.
they're
And
young, their brains aren't even fully developed. So,
correct.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yes, you're absolutely right, and, this is something that Kevin and I work, that my co-host and, for Screen Guardians, and we have been doing presentations around schools, and the beginning of the presentation is me just talking about digital health, what it is, why talking about technology and our relationship with technology is so important because to be like in the last 30 years, the number of screens people have in their homes has quadrupled
Yes.
and access to the internet and little handheld computers in our pockets at all times and the exposure and what that does to our physical, mental, emotional, social health is impacted. Just
Yes,
not only like that we have access to it, but what we're doing on it. And as parents, it requires more of us, period.
it
Like
does.
I mean, living in this digital world, like, yes, it's convenient because, like, oh, they can be entertained for a little bit, entertained. But the reality is, parental controls only go so far. And us having active conversations with them, being very transparent and being alert what's going on, but having a relationship with our children where they can talk to us when something goes, I don't know, haywire, unplanned, unexpected. And you guys are very active in Charlotte's life. Like, and I know that and so to know that she's enduring all that she did. And fortunately, you guys were right there with her and supporting her and were able to get other parents alongside you. The fact that the school was unsupportive of your efforts is mind blowing to me. But the education that's required with these devices and children learning how to navigate them safely is really important. So Kevin's part of our presentation is really important, is significant because he talks about a digital footprint. So that's like everything we do online, every picture, every transaction, like everything leaves a footprint, like breadcrumbs wherever you go. So helping kids understand that and like passwords and security on your devices and how do you know if someone's approaching you that's safe and unsafe, or like one of the rules that we have is you're not friends with somebody online that you're not friends with in real life. It
Same,
can't be because
same.
of the potential. But going back to the parents that were supportive and helping you guys navigate this situation, Jenny, how significant was that? How significant was it to have parents that you could talk about this, and how much did that play a role in a successful outcome in this situation, right? Like if you weren't able to have those
Yeah.
conversations with parents, could it have been a totally different situation? Or if all the parents were able to communicate with you guys and get on board, would that have progressed things quicker? Like what's your thoughts on that?
So important. You know, when you're in this situation, I think, you know, anytime a parent is walking through a situation with their kid, it's hard. You know, you don't want to see your kid hurt. You don't want to see your kid go through anything like that. So it's very hard. When you can lock arms with other parents that are willing to work with you, it was a massive blessing for us because it took something that was super painful and super hard and made it a little bit easier. Um, the parent that, you know, just absolutely stonewalled us and was like, my kid wouldn't do this. This is not, you know, it was awful because you're already questioning, you know, you're questioning so much as a parent. You're questioning if you're even doing parenting right. Like, am
Yeah,
I even a
of
good
course.
parent? Am I doing it right? Should I probably should have never even got her the phone. Like you're questioning all of these things already. And then when you have a parent that stonewalls you and, you know, it just makes you question things more. Like, maybe I am too involved. Maybe this is ridiculous. Maybe I just let her figure it out. But then, I'm also thinking about the suicide rate is up, and these kids that are like cutting themselves and doing all these things to themselves to hurt themselves. Like these are kids that are hurting. And, the phone hasn't helped that. It hasn't strengthened relationships. If anything, I think it's impacted kids' ability to like relate to other kids. So you have all of that playing a role in wanting to protect your kid, wanting to do the right thing for your kid, not wanting to be a bad parent, like not wanting to overstep. And so when you have parents that surround you, even when you don't know what you're doing, because we had never navigated anything like this. So we had no clue what we were doing, like absolutely no clue. It felt so much better to just know that there were parents that were like, we're going to lock arms with you. They didn't know what they were doing either, but they were willing to say, like, I mean, think about this, right? Like, none of us want our kids to be the bully. None of us want our kids to be the kid that does the bad thing. But
Right.
kids do stupid stuff. Like
Right.
every kid is going to do stupid stuff. Every kid is going to have a bad day. Um, Many of these kids that were involved are really good kids. They just did something stupid.
Yeah.
And you could see it when they sat at our table. They felt horrible. So it's like I'm so proud of those parents. I'm also so proud of those kids. Like, that is a lesson they will never forget in their life, ever. They will never forget what it
Yeah.
felt like to walk into the home and see Charlotte and apologize to her and sit at our table, experience grace from us,
Yeah.
be able to pray. Like, they'll never forget that. Um, so it was so powerful. I wish more parents would lock arms. I have a handful of parents. My daughter's a dancer, so there's a handful of parents at the studio that we have agreed to agree that, like, we are walking this walk with our kids. Like, if they get caught drinking, if they get caught whatever, like, we want to work this out together. These kids are not bad kids; they're very good kids, but they're kids. Um, so if you can find a group of parents that are willing to do that with you, I feel like it made the situation so much better for us. That was a really bad situation. On the flip side of that, the parents that weren't getting involved made it worse. Like, it was awful. So I really encourage parents to find a way to realize that you can have a really good kid that made a bad choice or did something stupid, and they just need help navigating it. And when parents are willing to lock arms together, and families, right? Because the kids locked arms together too. Those relationships are solid. That she's stayed connected with those kids, um, which she probably wouldn't have. I don't
Mhm.
know. I don't have a crystal ball, but she probably wouldn't have had we not gone through that.
Yeah.
Um,
I commend you. I commend you and Mike for having the grace to welcome those people into your home. And I think you taught such an important lesson that is being lost with digital. Meaning, like, we can send a message, an emoji, a meme, a video, and there's a text message, and there's very little emotion or social emotional connection to those words.
yeah,
So you can, in a group chat, say something careless, mean, aggressive about somebody, and there's no compassion or empathy for the person because they're just words you're
yes.
texting, right?
You don't see
But
their face. You
you don't
don't
see their
see.
face. Yeah, and
Mm-mm.
so you bringing them together where they physically have to see Charlotte, her pain, walk into your home and realize this is a person. This is a family that I'm like hurting. And I think that's really significant. And if more parents could lock arms and say, like, it, because the reality is, like you said, they're all good kids. We all have good kids. They
Yep,
are just having a hard time and they're trying to
yep,
survive socially. Maybe
yep,
like you that one girl that was the eighth grader that was causing some of the problems and leading some of the bullying. She admitted she was having a really hard time in her life. So we can look at these kids who are bullying potentially as they're just hurting and they're just
yep,
managing that hurt in a really bad way.
yep.
And so hopefully we can open our eyes to some compassion and empathy. But again, technology inhibits or prevents us from connecting to empathy or feeling empathy for others. And so I
Yes.
think what you did was fantastic, amazing. And I commend you. And it's just so disappointing the school did not support you. So, looking at what you guys went through, what advice would you give to parents who have a sixth grader right now, who have phones, who don't have phones, like like as you know, or even just middle kids who are the same age as Charlotte? Like, what would you advise, or even older? Like, what would you advise these parents as to navigate how to prepare, or if they are facing something like this?
Yeah, I think, we have a contract with Charlotte, a phone contract of what it looks like to show up on social media in a way that supports our family values, supports who Charlotte is as an individual. So starting there was really important to us because it was like, here's a baseline of expectations of what it
Mhm.
looks like for you to have a healthy relationship with social media and your phone. Um, does she always hit all of those marks? No, but she at least has a guardrail of what the expectation is. She also knows at any time that the phone is not her phone, it's our phone that she's allowed to use. But if she is not using that phone in a way that is productive or supportive of, you know, who she is and what's going on in her life, that phone can be taken away at any point in time. She thinks we're the strictest parents on the planet, the only parents that have these restrictions for her. And we do have some pretty decent ones in place. And I mean, one of the most basic ones that we're just kind of surprised is that how how many kids have access to their phone 24/7? So they go to
Yeah.
bed with their phone, they
Yeah.
stay up late on their phone. Um, we have a rule in our home that about an hour before it's time to start winding down for bed, the phones are put away. And the reason for that is a number of things. Like, nothing good can happen when you're by yourself on your
Yeah.
phone in the middle of
Right.
the night. You know what I mean? Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, there's nothing good that can happen. But also the impact that it has on your sleep is
Right.
massive. And, these kids are growing and they need sleep. Like, one of the best things they can do is get good sleep. So we've got that in place. So don't be afraid to put those types of things in place and communicate with your kid why you do it. Charlotte
Mhm.
hates it, but she's being taught why this is important. Um, don't hesitate to form partnerships with parents. I think that has been such a huge, huge benefit to us. We know the parents that are looking out for kids.
Mhm.
We're one of those parents. Like, we have told parents, you can trust us. Like, we are a safe house. We will pull your kid in. There is no judgment here. Our goal is to help these kids navigate this stuff. And so creating that safe space. Um, I think where parents make a big mistake is thinking that the school is going to handle this stuff. Schools are not equipped. That became very clear to us really, really fast. Like, even the counselor, the principal, they had no clue what to do. They had given up on these girls. And that makes me sad too, because when you hear, like, when you see the full circle of this, those girls needed help.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah,
girls
they did.
were desperate for help, desperate for some positive mentors in their life. And think about what could have happened if they got that at an earlier age. Like, they
Yeah.
figured it out in high school, but how many kids don't figure it out? How many kids were screaming for help,
Yeah.
didn't get it,
Right.
and went down a path that they didn't need to go down? So that was really eye opening for us too. And just kind of, I think it's hard. Parenting is hard. Raising kids is hard. Social media is really complicated. And, parents are doing the best that they can and kind of coming to it with that idea. Like, these kids aren't bad kids. Like, we saw that firsthand. They just made some bad choices. Um, and trying to navigate it the best you can. Like, we didn't have a handbook on this. We didn't know what we were doing. I don't feel like we still know what we're doing, but we're super open with our daughter. Um, we're super open with our goals that we want her to be a thriving, healthy individual, and that a phone doesn't necessarily help her mentally, physically. There are pieces of it that help her stay connected to her friends, which is so important at this age. But there are a lot of pieces that aren't great, like mental health stuff that we chatted about. We know that this is like a total drain on their mental
Mhm.
health. So, how do we help her start to self regulate and self identify? Like, I feel like crap and I've been on my phone for 3 hours, so
Yeah.
we're trying to ask her those questions, like, "When was the last time you were outside and got fresh air?" And "How are you feeling since you sat on your phone and scrolled for an hour?" "Don't you feel better after you go to practice?" And that kind of thing. Um, she's an elite athlete too, so her studio has restrictions in place, which has been helpful as well because, um, that her dance is really important to her, and so we feel fortunate that we have that as an additional piece of kind of regulators on her. Like, she has a social media contract with her studio of how she's supposed to show up and what that looks like. And, they're not allowed to participate in bullying. And so that's been helpful. But I realize that not every kid is an athlete that has that. So,
Mhm.
you know, I think the best advice I could give parents is that it's not going away. There's not a handbook. You have to be involved, as stressful as it is. Like, nobody's going to do this for you. The schools aren't, church isn't. Like, you have to be active. Kids' brains aren't fully developed, so they cannot self-regulate themselves. Like, they just can't. Um, so you have to be active, and it's not fun, because kids don't want to have restrictions on their phone. They really don't, but it's like we have to do it. We just have to. We took her phone away for, it was like either 2 weeks or 4 weeks, and it was such an awesome demonstration of how different everything was. Her
Mm.
attitude, her
Yeah.
sleep, her everything, and she gets it. And so, if parents don't think this is a big deal, take the phone away for 2 weeks and see how different your kid is.
Yeah.
Like, you will be shocked.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of restrictions in place. Like, she doesn't get her phone before school. She doesn't have her phone at school. The school that she's at right now, which is great, no phones at school, which I think is really, really awesome.
I agree.
Um, we try to have things in place like no phone until your homework's done. We give in on that sometimes because of her dance schedule and things like that. Um, the unplugging well in advance of bed so that, she's not just amped up on, so things like that we try to do to help. But it's, I honestly believe it's a daily struggle, a daily battle.
Yeah. Well, that's ultimately so like health, so digital health. Health is not a static position. You don't achieve health, period, you're done. Health
Yeah.
is a daily journey. So that's why I like the term digital health because it's literally a daily practice. Like I can
Yep.
say, I'm going to have a heart healthy lifestyle today. I have to do the
Right.
same thing tomorrow, right? And then the next day, right? And so the choices you're doing and the choices that you're making on a daily basis are impacting your health with XYZ, whatever it is, right? So with technology, digital things, we have to be cognizant. And those, sweet little humans, that have phones already, like they don't have the ability to understand consequences, right? Their frontal lobe is not developed. They're highly emotional and they don't understand the consequences, which is why as parents we have to set those parameters. And it sounds like you guys have done a really good job. But it's not easy. It's a daily practice and it's hard. It's really hard. And so I love the fact that you're creating community and you have community around you to support you. Jonathan Haidt in the Anxious Generation book talks about collective action. So whether if you're trying to accomplish like a phone free childhood, like through eighth grade or to high school, like whatever it is, like apps, you're not allowing your child on social media, doing it in community with
Yes.
others, like-minded parents, or you're just saying, hey, we have these rules around the smartphone use and social media use. And if your child's peers have those same rules, it makes life so much easier. So
Yep.
parents have to have conversations, get in communities, and start talking about what's working, what's not working, because ultimately we all want our kids to thrive. We all want our kids to be healthy and successful and hopefully have really beautiful friendships, right? And unfortunately, this digital stuff can negatively impact them dramatically, not just
Yes.
friendships, but their mental health, like we mentioned. So, you gave amazing tips, great advice, Jenny. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you would like to touch on with this subject you know, and share with us the wisdom and the knowledge that you've gained from your experiences?
I think the one last thing that I'll say is, after we experienced this, I started looking for opportunities to create situations or fun things to do that would encourage no phone use. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
trying to get kids into a space where they didn't feel the need to have their phone.
yeah,
And those have been incredible. And it's not overcomplicated, but trying to create space for that where kids can just be kids without sitting and scrolling has
yeah.
been awesome. We have found other parents that want that. And so, sometimes we'll do dinners together as families and just put the phones down and the kids just be kids for that night. And nothing fancy like pizza. Um, we hosted a Bible study over summer and I didn't really realize what was going to happen with that. And one of the most amazing outcomes of that was these girls were so desperate for connection, and once the environment was created that it was safe and they had a spot, we didn't have to regulate their phones at all. Like phones just kind of became something they weren't interested in because the relationships and the interaction was so much more um, satisfying, if
Hmm.
that makes sense.
Yeah,
So seeing that, I was like, wow, these kids really do want that connection. So if you can create opportunities for them to connect that would entice the phone usage to kind of go away, they really are seeking that. We have bonfires sometimes where for the kids, nothing fancy, just space where they can connect. Um, it's been really powerful, and so I think if you can be a household that creates that for your kids,
yeah,
a safe place where they can come and hang out and watch a movie or do a bonfire or, you know, the silly stuff that they see on TikToks, like the candy salads and all that kind of stuff. Um, it's been really positive. And, we want our home to be that home. We want our place, we want it to be a safe place for kids. And
right.
so um, that has been a real positive thing that has come out that we've seen that these kids do want connection. They do want to hang out. They need a safe place to do it. So be
Hmm.
that home, be that place. You don't have to have the best home. You don't have to be fancy.
Right, right.
They don't need that. Like they just want a place that they can hang out.
Question about that. Do you set the intention prior to them coming that, phones are going to be put away, or here's a basket, everybody put your phone in here. Let's go do, grab some marshmallows. We have a bonfire in the back. Do you set the tone?
We haven't had to, which
Oh,
kind of surprised me because I kind of thought with the Bible study I was going to have to, and it just kind of really organically happened. The dinners with the families, the parents are coming in very intentional, so the kids know, like, hey, we're gonna like just put our phones down. We're just gonna have a dinner. We're gonna have a couple hours where we're just hanging out, and so that's a little bit more intentional. We haven't had to take phones. Um, but that one is a little bit more like preparing the kids like, "Hey, we're just gonna hang out." And the bonfires and things like that, like, it kinda naturally started happening where they weren't really on their phone. They started talking and interacting and, you know, playing ghost in the graveyard and running around. Like they're kids, so it's really fascinating because they want to be so adult, but they're still kids, and when they have the opportunity to play tag, jump on a trampoline, go out and, we would take them on, we do scavenger hunts in, like, we have, like, the woods by our house, and kinda scare them and things like that. Like, that they love that stuff,
Yeah.
playing hide and go seek and, toilet papering and all the stupid stuff that kids do, creating a space for them to do that, um, really does encourage the phone to be put aside for a while. It's not forever, you know, and
Yeah.
they may take videos and they still may take photos because, everything is documented these days, and that's fine. But seeing that they were actually interacting and having fun is we've really enjoyed that. And that's what we want our home to be, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah, I love that because it is about creating connection, right? And creating community and connection, and it's lacking. I mean, though we're more connected, we are very disconnected, in this more digital world. So I love that you're doing that. It's a great idea. My kids love playing Ghost in the Graveyard too. So
It's so funny, like,
it
it
is
is a
fun.
fun thing. I One other thing that we've encouraged Charlotte to do too, which is not normal, we've tried to educate her that these snap relationships are very surface level, very fake. You're sending pictures of a wall to somebody. Like, there's how much connection can there be in that? And we've really encouraged her to take relationships that are important to her off of Snap and into texting, into phone calls where there's a
Mhm.
little bit more of a connection. Um, they're not great at that,
Yeah, they're
because
not.
they're kind of in a world where the Snap thing is their world. But trying to educate her that there is really no substance in a Snap relationship. Even
Mhm.
if you have this huge streak, because the streaks are important and all these things. So that's a process, but it's something that we encourage her to move off of Snap when appropriate, like when a relationship matters, because
Yeah,
not all of them. I mean, there's a lot of them that are just Snap relationships, which are fine. But, for the ones that she's closer to, like, have more meaningful conversations, whether it's
yeah,
through text or FaceTime or actual phone calls,
yeah. I
which has been
agree.
helpful.
And my kids, so we have a flip phone right here. And my kids, this is the phone that they get if they are going somewhere. And at one point, my son was talking like this. He didn't know that you have to hold it up to your ear. So it's so funny. But the texting on here is really difficult, right? So,
Yes.
which I think is hilarious and somewhat intentional on my part because it makes them pick up the phone and call. And to the
Yes.
point where he's there, my daughter, they both share it. This is our house phone. So Nora will text her friend and she's like, I can't text. And I'm like, oh, looks like you could call. So
Yeah.
they like the art of talking, the skill of talking and dialogue. Like it's being lost. So it's important. So I think I just wanted to share that because I think it's hilarious that like this is what we grew up with, right? But
Yeah, it's so important, and I can't tell you how many kids, come to our house and won't look us in the eye,
mm,
don't know how to have a conversation because their their communication is through a screen.
hmm,
And that's one thing that we've been really adamant with Charlotte too, is you will know how to shake hands, you will know how
yes,
to look adults in the eye, you will know how to have a conversation with people. And even when she's had one boyfriend, and when she broke up with her boyfriend, she was like, I'm just going to text him. I was like, 100% you are not. You are going to call him or FaceTime him. Like, you're lucky I'm not going to make you do it in person. And
yeah,
she was just mortified. She's like, nobody does that. And I'm like, you will learn how to do that because there's a human element to this
hmm,
that, um, matters. People's feelings matter, and, so it's little things like that that I think as parents, we can enforce that aren't necessarily popular, but
right,
are important to helping our kids know how to communicate beyond a screen, know
right,
how to actually have a conversation. Because when they do become adults and when they do have to go for a job interview or when they are interacting, they are going to have to, at some point, have a real conversation with people. And
right.
there's a lot of these kids that simply are not being equipped to do it. And we have to do it as parents. We have to help them.
Mhm.
because the screen is not going to help them with a job interview. The screen is not going to help them, be everything that they were designed to be, whatever it is.
Mhm.
They have to know how to communicate with people, and we are losing it. I think you're very right. That's a skill that is being lost,
Yeah.
which
I
is
listened to a
crazy.
podcast that talked about there's a part of your brain, I can't remember if it's the amygdala, I can't remember, but it's, our ability to read social cues, facial expressions, and to like be in an environment with a bunch of people and tolerate a crowd is like a muscle. And that part of our brain needs to be worked and kind of strengthened consistently. And if it does not, then your ability to read facial expressions, social cues weakens, and you feel anxious because you're not sure if you're safe, right? You're not sure if you're okay. And then same thing with being in a crowd, right? If you're not used to it and all of a sudden you are, like you might have some underlying anxiety. And because again, it's a muscle in your brain, essentially like a muscle that you have to consistently challenge to strengthen it. Otherwise, it atrophies or weakens. And then guess what happens? Social anxiety, right?
Yeah,
And so your ability to read facial expressions, social cues takes actively working it on a consistent basis. And kids are losing that, right? And so as parents, keeping them off screens all the time, making them look at people in the eye, shake hands, help provide experiences, and fostering relationships in real life, in person, will help strengthen that, but also help prepare your kids to be better equipped for life and
absolutely.
maintain empathy, compassion, and stronger relationships, which I think will help them have a greater sense of self, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So, Jenny, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing all of your wisdom and your nuggets of wisdom and knowledge. And I'm so sorry you and your family had to go through all of that, but I know good comes from something that's terrible, right? Like I believe God turns something and makes it good. And I know that you sharing your story will impact others and help them navigate maybe a similar situation or help us learn that communication and staying close in relationship with parents is really important. And that we also need to be more cognizant and with conversations and dialogue with our kids. So all of it is so, so helpful, Jenny. Really, thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Honor to be here, lady.
Yeah, I appreciate it. All right. If you have questions, please post below or ask us or send us a message directly. We would love any feedback. And of course, take this podcast. And if you know somebody who's navigating something similar or who has children of age that are potentially facing some challenges with friends and bullying, please share this episode with them. We know in sharing this wisdom and knowledge, we can help, prepare others for challenges like this and hopefully prevent something bad from happening. So thank you for joining us on Screen Guardians podcast. Thank you, Jenny. And we look forward to seeing you guys next time.